Hello, selectors, and welcome back to the Life First Podcast. I'm Andrew, and we're going over all the Persona Diva centers, and we're going to talk about Allos today. So, Allos is probably the only one of the 5 centers that are coming out in this set that is pretty well known for what it theoretically does, at least in Japan, right? So Japan basically it came out. There wasn't a lot of use of any of the other L rigs, although some people thought they were good, but maybe outclassed by the Desona L rigs, with the exception of Allos. Allos had a pretty clear goal that people attached it to, an already existing strategy that ended up being good and just kind of revitalizing an old strategy. Whether or not Atoms is the perfect way to run Allos, I don't actually know. I think there's also a second build out there that I don't have here, and Japan I don't think really figured out, which is that Allos gives a unique effect in the Elrig deck that we haven't had before, and I like that a lot. And I think there's people who are more in tuned with the draw discard type of archetype that does exist in Wecross, specifically in black, red, and blue. These people are probably the ones that are going to crack it before I do. But it's my job to fill you guys in with sort of like the standard choices that you could run. I just wanted to bring that up as an option, as to something that I think you guys could probably take further than I am here. Let's talk about this new Piruluk. So this new Allos Piruluk is auto. Once during your turn, when you discard a card from your hand from an effect or cost, you get to draw a card. That's the unique thing, right? This is sort of Allos's signature thing. We've seen it on her Signy and to an extent her assists, but this is really kind of where it's going to shine, right? And her center, I should say. I think this blank effect of just rebaiting one of your discards is one of the more powerful things you can do in blue. And I think, like I said, I think someone else will crack it before this does. But there's a standard thing that uses their hands quite often, and that's Atoms. Atoms has always been kind of this deck where it's a draw discard deck, but its own ability to draw cards is either snowbally or terrible. Like it really didn't have a way to really refuel its hand well. It kind of evolved a little bit to run Remember as a way to refuel its hand. And when it ran Remember, it did the job well, but because it had no damage output in the Elrig deck, it ended up being a little too slow. Allos, however, gives you another option to that kind of fixes that with the Atoms deck. You can discard 3 cards from your hand, target Signy on the opponent's field, gets negative 10k till the end of turn. Sometimes Atoms struggled with opening up big lanes. Negative 10k is big, right? Especially because we live in a Desona meta where there's a lot of 10ks running around right now. You also get the ability to, of course, exceed 4. Get the Fasona Signy or Fasona spells and add them to your deck. Again, I'm not going to go over that. If you want to see my deep dive on that, you can watch the Akino video. Overall, this is going to be a very powerful turn 3 flexible choice for you. And then after, you're probably always going to pick the blue one because that allows you to draw 3 cards and discard 2. And then you're going to pick some other stuff with it too. I think that's going to allow you to have a very powerful turn, but you got to keep this deck from being lackluster as the game drags on. I think Atoms does a pretty good job of doing that. So we're going to use the pretty standard Atoms build of things. I'm just going to quickly go over it. Machina to bring black into the deck because you need black for the Atoms, and you're going to be playing enough black that you can run Smash. Again, you want to have cards in hand, and specific cards in hand, like your H2Os, right? So this helps you fix that kind of deck thing. You've also got MC Line Dig. It's very powerful here. It gets you the Atoms, both colors that you need for it. Plus a Disrespect. I do think that you want to run a 3-stop in this type of build. It's truly mid-range, right? So you're going to be doing the mid-range thing. Outside of that, Xenocluster is the card that I chose here, but theoretically you could pick a different thing here. Maybe even Countdown Heals. I think Xenocluster is the choice, though, because you are a little potentially bad to Enderburn, and there's enough Enderburn going on that Xenocluster is a fine choice here, but I'm just saying you can find a different piece if you really want to. Chaos, Chaos, Chaos is the new piece that's going to be spicing up the nation after this. With the ability to either choose two, you can get 3 Elrigs from your trash that share the same color as your center Elrig, which is great. Atoms are actually, the better atoms are blue, so there's always been some kind of weird tension there. So you can get back specifically H2 and H2O when you use that effect. You can target up to 2 Signy on the opponent's field, give them negative 10,000. With your other atoms that are giving negative effects, you're killing anything on the field with that kind of thing. That's a board wipe. Or you're putting the top 10 cards of the opponent's deck into the trash. There's some other effects to it, but let's ignore that for a second. Atoms has always wanted to do mill, but it's always kind of had to choose something else because Death deck was too expensive, and this is just better. This is just better. So being able to add suddenly the refresh damage into Atoms where it was kind of lacking it or needed a Flaris to really get over the hump, very good, very good, very, very good. Okay, so let's talk about the main deck of choice here. This is one of the few times where I can actually show the actual cards here based on things because they're English. So we're doing the standard Atoms thing here. Standard Atoms usually runs 4 Oigona, maybe 3. It's not an Atoms, but it does the Atoms effect of using your hand as a weapon to do negative 3,000. The other card is PA that does that, right? But it's a little bit too hefty of a card. Discarding 2 in order to give something negative 8k is useful at times. There are going to be times where you're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm against Toyuki. It's a 8k, I need to kill it. This is going to do that job, right? So there are times that you use PA, but the times are a little bit less. If you really felt weird about it, you could cut 1 Oigona, add 1 PA. I think there's enough Atoms in this list that you don't need to necessarily do that. Atoms at level 2 uses BP. This card's fantastic. You pay an enter and you discard a card, which you theoretically get rebated for, to give something negative 10k. Huge. Very good level 3. I'm running 3 in this deck. And then your other Atoms that are going to be the impressive ones here. GA fills out your life bursts. You need blue. It does a 5k, which is quite good, but then also you get to draw 2 cards and your opponent discards discards a card. Supplements your game plan a little bit there. Of course, you're going to use H2O and H2O and H2 combo, right? H2 draws you a card for an enter. Then when you rise on top of it, the opponent discards a card at random. When H2O attacks, you get to either draw a card or make the opponent discard a card. Plus, it's also really hard to vanish, right? So as long as you have enough trash recursion, which this deck does, to make H2O reliable, this card becomes a phenomenal Signy. It always has been. The bump of the road has been it's annoying to set up. This deck is going to make it easier to set up. Outside of that, the deck wants to run has always wanted to run white to supplement some of its other issues that it's had, right? The deck Atoms loses quite hard to remember Elrig and also remember Memoria. So it always wants to end up using Yuki or Pale Lady in this case. Pale Lady having a burst is actually pretty big for it, to vanilla out a Signy so that way it can do its negative effects and not have to necessarily pay extra taxes to do it. So these are good choices to do it. Plus there's a fair amount of ways to bring things back from your trash to the field using a burst. So these are fine to use in those scenarios too. And then it's always wanted Exia. The deck kind of goes a little bit long. Sometimes you just need to buy an extra turn in order to get the extra damage in. Exia can potentially do that. It's always wanted guard recursion too, so I think actually getting the Fasona card that gets guards back to your hand is actually a pretty big game for this type of deck. Outside of that, you're supplementing your discard with random drain, and also I've got a ZR in here to help make sure you get your mills. You've got your modems, and I think modems, they're not Atoms, but they're good. They vanish a spell. They vanish. You're running enough spells here for for random drain, to do the modem thing and get some negative 3,000 spread across. But you're also milling the opponent out, right? This is modems that's its best it's ever been, because you basically have spells on demand. It means that you can get the extra mill just in case you need it. And honestly, 10k usually isn't enough to get the mill. You need to get about 4 more to guarantee it, right? Even in my group's testing, I think that's what we've basically been locking on to. Modem gets you there, but there's another card that also gets you there in this deck, which is Maho Maho. It's a level 2. That says whenever this attacks, you can put the top 4 cards of your opponent's deck into the trash, unless they discard a card. Basically, both of those options are great for you. You've got a hefty amount of discard in here, so if they discard a card, cool. This is just Monoman, and it's a black Monoman. Fantastic. Sorry, not Monoman, Bruno, I guess, in that scenario. If it mills the opponent too, you only need to get one of those mills off for it to be good. You also can get in a scenario where you're basically forcing this because the opponent doesn't have cards to discard or can discard a card, but it would be horrible for them to do so. Maho Maho does that very well. TH has always been a kind of the black sheep of the Adams tribe. It's always been good, but no one's ever really used it. Because you want to use the other effects, the other cards more often, and also often you're a black deck, so you need to cut down on blue. This being a blue deck, this being rebate, like an easy rebate by, mind you, for your discard a card, get your H2O or get your H2 to fill out like your H2O lanes that you're trying to put together, get rebated for it, and then have a resilient board against removal is very strong. So this card is a pretty auto include, I think, in here as a 2 of. But that's the deck. I think it's strong. I mean, the Adams package has always been strong. It's just been out of use because I think Desona is stronger. I think getting more reliable hand refill with this new Allos has put Adams back on the map potentially. But like I said, I think there's also a just pure deck. There's probably a deck where you're just discarding 1 or 2 cards purely for the payoffs of the self-discard package, and you end up ahead on that. But I'm not quite up to date with those packages myself for this to really come to fruition. So let me know if you guys have any ideas for that specific deck, or if that gave you any inspiration to go off on your own. Let me know how you think about Adams, or Adams being back too. See you guys.